Welcome back, and we're moving into our first conversation for today, focusing on a topic that has dominated the news for the past week, and we're going to get some more information on it, and that is the Pact Amendment Bill. Now, very interesting things took place with this, of course. It was introduced in the House of Representatives at the time of the budget reading. It was passed on to the Senate, where it was voted down, and ultimately, it was still passed on to the Governor General for assent, as it has been deemed a money bill. Now, joining us this morning is one senator who voted no to the bill. We have with us the PUP senator, Senator Valerie Woods. Good morning, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Sonny. Thank you, Marlene.
Let's begin by talking about the vote in the Senate, first of all. Why there was the majority who voted against the bill. Can you begin as a senator to speak from your perspective regarding the vote?
Well, from the perspective of the opposition senators, when we reviewed that bill, we maintained from the outset that we didn't think that the Pact mechanism was the mechanism to introduce such a fee, because it has nothing to do with conservation. And when you read the Pact Act, it is clearly a legislation that was set up specifically to earmark funding for conservation, for no other reason. And so we looked at that, and we also considered the fact that if you're going to tax or charge any visitor departing through our airport, then there is a mechanism already established. It's the Departure Tax Act and the various fees associated with the act of departing. And so we felt for those reasons, the fact that this singular act this singular motion to put something through the Pact Act that now will have monies that go to the government's General Consolidated Revenue Fund is a clear departure from all the support for the Pact, all the reasons behind using the Pact for the Debt for Nature swap, for the Mesoamerican Reef Foundation, the Mar Alliance, the good work that's being done internationally that recognizes Pact as a model. All of that in one swoop gets undone because of this single act. And it's interesting also that it comes at a time when Pact itself is going through a strategic evaluation of sorts. I met with some of the consultants not too long ago, and one of the concerns expressed is the very autonomy of the Pact, which began dwindling, quite frankly, from last year with the original amendment.
Now, I want to be able to point out that, in fact, and we heard it in your presentation as well, you do have a very good knowledge as to how Pact or the trust is supposed to work. You did at one time work with the organization, and I think that's one of the things that I wanted us to be able to clarify, because in terms of installing a fee for conservation, the purpose, as you pointed out, as established in the Pact Act, is for it to be returned back into investment and management of protected areas.
Correct.
All right.
Absolutely.
Now, talk about what you've seen in terms of when you worked with the organization and the diversion of sorts of the direction it's now taking.
Certainly, and perhaps that's one of the reasons why I come to this particular legislation with too much passion, or a lot of passion and seriousness. I worked at Pact for between 5 to 6 years, and when I was managing the trust fund, and it is a trust fund, it had all the adjectives you could think of. It was a slush fund for government, and I worked on the People's United Party government. So it was a slush fund, it was a kiddie fund, no real work was being done with monies given out. And so I was asked if I would come over and help to manage this fund. And I did that. And it's one of my proudest moments in my professional career is that we were able to, if you will, rebrand the Pact and make sure that it is doing what it was intended, what so many NGOs under both governments' tenure, what they fought for. we made sure that we had conversations with the original consultants of the, if you will, the Pact mechanisms and its strategic evaluations and assessments to ensure how far off has this gone and what will it take to get it back. And that's what we did. We had we introduced legislation to make sure that that board was as autonomous as we could possibly get it, and we had additional recommendations. Government changed, those were not followed through. So I have seen where Pact made, with the help of so many good team players working at Pact, and with the help of, quite frankly, those in government who listened to the conversation, listened to the presentations and said, yeah, Pact is supposed to be a fund for conservation. We did so, there were several willingness to pay surveys, very interesting, where visitors were prepared to pay a little bit more than the $7.50 Belize, as long as they knew, because let's be real, the world is as close to you as the click of a button, so you know what's happening in every country. As long as it is for conservation and it doesn't get caught up in that big black hole called the Government General Revenue Fund. And so we had all of that support. So now you fast track to 2017, and there's going to be, original version was to be an increase in conservation fee. Fantastic, except it wasn't for conservation. The $32.50 increase, which is a huge increase, well beyond what willingness to pay surveys had resulted in, that was going to go to the government just to help meet their debts. So that was shot down. I don't even think the House committee even tabled it, if I remember from the news coverage. So they brought back another version a week after, which was a week before the Senate meeting, a thing called a development fee, which is semantics. It's just the same $32.50 to go through a conservation legislation mechanism, but it has nothing to do.
And that is the discrepancy that you pointed out on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, correct? With regards to the fact that that wasn't what was initially brought before you guys, and then it came out once again, I believe it was on Thursday of last week, where yourself and the 13th Senator Salas were able to speak on the matter.
Yeah, at some point we're going to have to stop calling him the 13th Senator. But yes, Senator Salas also pointed that out. And the government press release that came out saying that it will be sent, and it has been assented to, and it will be sent to the Governor General, also referred to a variation of the conservation fee, of which it is not. It is clearly in the introduction of a new fee that will be taxed on to visitors going through the airport, that has nothing to do with conservation and everything to do with just general budgetary support.
That puts us up there, that puts us up there with some of the countries that have the highest departure tax in the Caribbean, right?
We now go from, when you add up all the fees, departure, security, screening, and all the different fees associated, that's on your ticket, you including the conservation fee, you now go from, I believe it's $39.25 US per person to about $55 US.50. So we are definitely there in terms of among the highest. Tourism stakeholders, I am sure, even those involved in the airline development committee program, where we're seeing new airlines coming to Belize, which is a good thing. But when they had signed off to come to Belize and you had new flights coming in, there was no talk that your departure fee was going to go from $39.25 to $55.50. So this will definitely be an issue.
It's interesting because you do have quite a bit of background that we can tap into just with this one conversation. So you've also worked within the tourism sector, and we heard the BTIA speak out about the concerns of the price increase. Do you really believe it'll be a deterrent to the rate of tourism that we're seeing at this point? Do you think it will stop persons from purchasing a ticket to come to Belize?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens for those who have purchased tickets, to see if now they have to, if there's any addition that has to be made. Nobody likes to be caught off guard. And particularly for the overnight sector, they will always tell you when it comes to taxes and fees, there has to be a grace period, if you will, because packages are sold in advance. The other thing is, yes, people are looking at the amount of monies they're spending to go to a destination, and if the destination is high price, and if it is worth that price. So, like I've said in other media, time will tell the effect that this will have, or to the extent that it will have. Certainly, visitors cannot be under the impression that the Pact fee has gone up, because it has not. And so if that is going to be a message, because that's the easiest way, by the way, to not let it be an issue, because the country is doing so good for conservation that it has increased its conservation fee. That is a lie. It is a development fee that has nothing to do with conservation fee. So we wait to see if tourists and visitors will take this up.
One of my concerns has to do with the permanency of these changes. Sometimes when we implement tax increases and what have you, it's for a specific period of time to try to get things
Have you ever seen it come down?
It never comes down back, and that's my concern with these kinds of increases.
Now, talking about the increase in revenue, we understand the financial situation that we are in as a country, and government does have to make very difficult choices about sources of revenues. The consideration of additional taxes on tourists was a recommendation actually that came out from the Chamber of Commerce, not specifying the Pact fee. But my question to you is your greater concern that this additional fee has been tacked on to the Pact fee, or the fact that the money does not go to conservation?
Both. If it were a genuine conservation fee, although I don't think $32.50 increase would have been welcomed. Not even I quite frankly, would support such a drastic increase. You cannot do that. However, yes, it's on two fronts. The fact that it's not a conservation fee, and the fact that, remember, it is in addition to the other law where 10% of the revenues of Pact and so many other statutory boards will also be commandeered. What will be interesting is to determine if the revenue is going to factor in the $32.50, or will it just be based on the original $7.50? So those are some details, I guess, that would have to be ironed out. So if there were an increase for a fee that allows the trust fund to give more monies to conservation, I would be among those who would definitely be supporting. My question would be the extent of that increase. However, it would have to be within the context that the trust fund mechanism is above board, that it is not just a kitty fund and a slush fund, that it is not supplementing what government departments should already be doing. It really was a mechanism, and is a mechanism, that was established for grant funds to be given to conservation groups for the stellar work that they're doing. So I take your point, Isani. These types of legislation, you never get them back. So it'll be interesting. What happens after there's an outcry that we need more funds for conservation? Is it that the $32.50 government will agree to apportion a part of it back to Pact, or is it that we're going to increase a conservation fee? It just becomes very muddy and messy.
I think all of this is an attempt by the government to be able to, as we say, grow the economy to the 3% threshold that they need. What happens if we do meet that target? And it goes back to my question, do we then either remove the tax increase? Do we apportion those monies to other areas, for instance, in the conservation sector? What do we do then?
Well, precisely. Well, I think the first question is, if we haven't grown the economy in 9 years, how are we going to do it miraculously in 1? You know, taxation, that will always be an avenue for any government. But one has to be, I think, a lot more responsible and more reasoned and rational in where it's going to apply tax. One of the things that the senators pointed out in that debate, that there were other areas where the fees could have gone up, such as the passports, the visas, such as collecting the uncollected taxes. It was over $55 million in uncollected taxes. So where's the effort in putting that through? Or at least, can you try and collect, if not all, a huge amount of it between now and, let's say, the next 2 or 3 months, and then come back and reassess? There's nothing that says it had to be passed on that day. And one of the points I tried to make in my presentation is that the bondholders gave the country up until September 30th to approve the budget to meet their requirements. My suggestion was very simple. Could we not just wait another month or two at even specified time, but to just rethink? And I also said it quite frankly, in the context of, well, we were looking at a budget that was filled with so many errors and mistakes, and it was a little bit, I think, insulting. Not a little bit, it was grossly insulting to senators and to the Belizean public. You're asking us to approve something that is so grossly flawed. So for all those reasons, I think a little bit more time would not have hurt for some of these, to rethink some of these fees.
Now, Senator, let's move on to how this issue has progressed. And I think what has taken place in the past week has been one of great concern to the wider public. The 13th senator, Senator Asmani Sala, or the conservation senator, was introduced after a very long time since it was first established. There were delays with the first nominated senator, Gregory Chuck. The BNTU took a stand on issues against corruption issues. And finally, we came to the point that there was a 13th senator introduced. This has been seen as an opportunity to enhance the democratic process. And for the first time with the Pact bill, we saw the opposition and social sector senators be able to have a vote in their favor, primarily because there is a 13th senator. Now, when you look at what has taken place with government's decision to still move the amended bill forward to the Governor General, citing the term, they're citing it as a money bill, which we can explain a bit. In other words, there are certain bills that don't need the approval of the Senate. And that's what they're saying this particular bill is. I want to talk to you about what it means to you as a senator, understanding the process of democracy, and what this could potentially mean.
That's loaded.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful for it, because I've obviously given a lot of thought over this past week of what it means to be a senator if you're not appointed by the government, what it means for democracy, and given the statements of the Attorney General on classifying all the senators who dare to go against the government wishes as obstructionists.
Well, we're going to get there. So,
first, let me take it in pieces.
Yeah.
The money bill. Section 78(1) of the Constitution, which the Attorney General refers to on the government press release, is very clear in defining what constitutes or what makes up a money bill. Now, there are some legal opinions out there that question if the Pact amendment rarely fits that category. When you read the definition, I believe it's 80. Sorry, the definition of the money bill is Section 80 of the Constitution. Now, Section 78(1) does refer to, if you will, a process or procedure. And what we're saying, when you read it, it does speak to recognizing how our Senate is composed or comprised, that when a bill is defeated by the Senate, the House can still, notwithstanding that defeat by the Senate, resolve. Important word here being resolve. The House can still resolve to send it onward to the Governor General's office for assent. Our view, obviously, is that there was no such resolution because the House has not met.
Yeah.
Our view is that when you read Section 78(1), it does allow, Marlene, for that democratic process because it refers to certain time frames, such as within a month. It is a fact that money bills don't get to be stopped by a Senate. But it is also a fact that money bills can be debated and sent back for further discussion, improvement within a month, though, no more than a month, before it gets sent to the Governor General. If it is that after that process, it will still be the same bill, so be it. Our issue, don't make a mockery of the Constitution and the Senate. Don't make a mockery of democracy. Why bypass the procedure? Why not had the House meet to resolve, notwithstanding the Senate's defeat, we will still move forward. So it does leave one to question how serious was the Prime Minister in his remarks in the House back in 2008 when this same Prime Minister who said, words to the effect, and I paraphrase, that he is relinquishing control of the Senate to non-government control, because that's how serious of a sea change he wants in the democracy. That was a hallmark moment in our House of Representatives when the incoming government leader, the Prime Minister of this country, say to the public, I know what this means, but I stand by it, and I pledged in my campaign that I will do this. Well, it's 9 years later, and obviously it was only because of the marches and the protests that we got the 13th senator,
Well,
who is not just a conservation NGO. I mean, had fortunate opportunity to meet with the grouping of NGOs that came up with the, appointed the 13th senator. And we're dealing with conservation NGOs, yes, but civil society NGOs, people doing excellent work on the ground that hardly get noticed. So it's a slap in the face. I've used the term before in the Senate. A complete slap in the face, and a glaring example is I say one thing, but I really don't mean it.
Now, it seems like almost, we've interviewed many senators who detest being called a rubber stamp. And it has been a term that we have used for a long time for the Senate, simply because there was very little power just based on the numbers within the Senate and their representation.
Yeah.
There's no teeth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe that the Belizean people really had hope in seeing an additional senator appointed, that somehow the debate, the discussion, and what would eventually be passed in terms of legislations would be beneficial to the people, considering all the views that are represented there. Now, the Attorney General has spoken to the media and made some very interesting points. And one of the issues that he uses is the fact that the Senate is appointed. And essentially, how will appointed persons make decisions that go against what elected officials have made? And I want to give you the opportunity to respond to that.
Well, I disagree with his view. A Senate is the check and balance on any government. It is not there to obstruct, which is the Attorney General's view. The senators are there to critique and look at as objectively as possible, which is the issue, at legislation, but with a view to improve on it, not to reject it, but to improve on legislation. That's why it is allowed for in the Constitution, in the Senate orders as well, to send back legislation with or without amendments, to have further consultation, if you will. I don't get upset about being dubbed part of the rubber stamp group. I've been called much worse. But I do want to see it change. I would like to see that the Prime Minister's words do have meaning, even if it comes 9 years later. And I do want to be a part of real change, because we're doing a disservice, as I had said earlier in the Senate. It's really not to the senators, We're doing a disservice to generations that are yet to come if we don't get this right. All we were saying, just a little bit more time, can we go back? we understand on the opposition side. I won't speak for the social partners, but on the opposition side, of course, we all understand that the government is broke, that this country is strapped for cash, how we got here, all the blame going around. We understand all of that. But not because of that, we're saying, could we not continue business as usual and just take a little bit more time? And I think that is what is annoying and irritating to so many of us who are genuinely trying. You go into a Senate meeting, Marlene and Isani, and you're not even debating a budget.
Yeah.
You're debating a lot of political rhetoric that has no place there. Will it stop? It probably will take a long time, but more of us have to start talking up and saying enough is enough. It's ridiculous. I don't agree, and I take issue with the Attorney General referring to any senator who looks at any bill, money bill or otherwise, critiques it based on fact, and say this cannot pass. You are doing a serious disservice to the country. Please, let's take it back and let's look at this. No, we were not elected, but if I take his view, he has suggested, or I think he stated frankly, if you wanted to change, put your name on a ballot, win, and in the election, and then you change it. Those are the only options Belizeans have. So there's no other role that Belizeans have to play in this development of Belize. In other words, politics is the only game in town. I denounce it. I do not agree with that. There are so many other ways and roles Belizeans can play to make a dent and impact. So I denounce what the Attorney General said. I do not think my Senate colleagues, government or otherwise, are obstructionists. I do think if people are serious, and I mean not just the senators, all of us, we need to denounce it, the mockery that they're making of democracy every single time.
Well, what I think that the point brought out was it was almost dismissive of the role of the Senate. And as you pointed out a little bit ago, was that it is a check and balance system. Yes. It is necessary in the country. And while there was a very good debate that used to take place before, now having the 13th senator in place, there's more opportunity in being able to allow for the proper process and changes that should take place with the bills. Now, I want to move ahead with this just a bit, looking at the position of the opposition with this. We've seen quite a few times where you have moved to legal action when you feel that something is being done that shouldn't. Has that been considered at this point in time?
Yes, that is being considered, particularly on the grounds of the procedure, that it was not following procedures of Section 78(1). So I have confirmed that the legal counsels within the party are closely reviewing everything that has unfolded since the defeat in the Senate. Yeah. I would not be surprised either if I were to learn that others were considering that as well, because this one was very glaring. It's been dubbed as the historic, the noes have it in the Senate. So on the very face of that alone, the fact that it was probably the first time you have witnessed this, certainly in recent history, then some care should have been taken by the government on how to handle it, but not just to treat it as yet just another political stunt.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you stopping in and sharing with us your perspective, and we thank you for being here.
Thank you, anytime.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by representatives of TASA, the Turnoff Atoll Sustainability Association, about their ongoing work. So stay tuned.